Welcome back, everybody. I'm Sean LaFlock. I'm here with Scotty Hagness. This is Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity. Conversations, Fitness, Wellness, and Longevity. Scott, how goes it?
It's going good. Outside of my razor fell in the toilet, so I'm a little scruffy while I'm waiting for some replacement parts.
Yeah, man, you look good. I like Scott's scruff. Unlike me, where I get I get Sean homeless. I look like a hobo.
If mine gets much longer, I start looking a little scruffy.
Yeah, that's good, man. How's everything going up in that area?
Good. A little earlier fall arrival, but good.
I weep for you, Scott. We are now in hurricane season, and luckily the first hurricane passed by us. I could care less, unless it's going to be literally blowing my house over. I could care less. It's 2018, guys. Let's get over this already. Interesting enough, I was reading about some hurricane stuff, and in the Pacific Ocean, they call those typhoons. Mm-hmm. And Genghis Khan, one of the biggest, I guess, rulers, emperors, basically ruled all of, Asia at one point, most of Asia. He was trying to conquer Japan, and twice he tried to sail across to get to Japan, and typhoons stymied his attempts. That's how legend goes.
Yeah.
So if
that would be,
guys on some rickety boats could just get out in the ocean, they get hit by a typhoon and then just turn back, I think I'm okay living in my safe house and inland about 3 miles.
Yeah, probably all right there.
Probably all right. Yeah. And the other thing is, I think after the mid 90s, everything built after that had to have at least hurricane level 4 windows and structures and that kind of stuff. So the days of having little tin shacks just get blown away and smashing into things are pretty much over.
Yeah.
Or so I think, at least. I mean, this is all bro science anyway. Speaking of bro science, Scott, I finally got my blood work back. Shout out to the guys at Renew U Medical, my man Joe at Renew U. He is a physician's assistant, but specializes in functional medicine. I was talking to someone the other day about the uses of functional medicine. We've kind of gone through this before, but functional medicine is the idea that traditional allopathic medicine is you presented with symptoms, and we try to mitigate those symptoms. So, for instance, if you have a runny nose, you take a antihistamine. If you have pain in your shoulder, you take an anti-inflammatory or some kind of pain blocker. Whereas if the approach in functional medicine is either of those two, they try to look at the underlying causes of what might cause those symptoms, right? So if you have a runny nose, okay, let's actually see what this might be. Other than, I kind of minimize what allopathic medicine is, but I think they look at the symptoms as kind of the end all be all, and then go off of that. Whereas I think functional medicine tries to analyze why are those symptoms there in the first place. And most non-acute illnesses probably boil down to most likely 3 things: some kind of insulin or sugar sensitivity, mismanagement of insulin. Second, adrenals, looking at adrenals, and then the adrenals, thyroid, sex hormone components, and then from there looking at possible toxins, heavy metals, and that kind of stuff. That's kind of the 3 tiers of things that we look at, right?
Yeah.
So if any tests happen from, once things are seen, we kind of go after that stuff until it's resolved. And then we look back at the symptoms and see if the symptoms then resolve, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, my kind of symptoms have been, and by the way, this is kind of eating 98% organic, free range, the whole thing, right? So we're looking at the variables that are under the control, right? Mm-hmm. And that's one thing that I emphasize, because a lot of people are like, well, I don't feel well. I'm like, all right, are you eating most of the time correctly? No? All right, don't even bother wasting your money until you do that. All right, what about sleep? or all of like the very non-invasive things that you would approach and you could tweak without having to do any kind of intervention, right? Or a major intervention where it comes to supplementation or something like that. So for me, I'm eating, 98% clean. And by the way, my cheats aren't like, still don't have gluten in them. They're still pretty much non-dairy. My cheats are like some paleo cookies with 2 or 3 a week, not like a meal. And I'm having a large variety of foods. I try to eat organic as much as I can now. I'm making the investment to do that. So, kind of mitigating the amount of pesticides and that kind of stuff. And gain any kind of potential vitamins and minerals and that kind of stuff through soil. So it is what it is there. And then the other one is I try to do free range and grass-fed meat as much as possible. One thing I will say is that I don't eat quite as much organ meat as I probably should, but hopefully that's mitigated by the colloidal minerals that I think it's what it is. Isn't that it? I don't know. Dick Tom talks about this, supplementing minerals. I think it's called essential colloidal essentials or something like that. It's from Now Superfoods. Right, yeah. I've been having that. So hopefully through my diet, I'm getting everything that I need in terms of proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. But chronic fatigue-ish type stuff. So kind of like in the middle of the day, not feeling good, irritability, mood swings, a little bit of excess body fat based upon caloric intake, even with restrictions and with increased exercise, and inability to sleep through the night. Those are my biggest symptoms, right? Mm-hmm. And this is something that I've been kind of whittling away at for the last 2.5 years since I started doing functional medicine or delving into it. And I will say that unless you are prepared to kind of go down the rabbit hole a little bit, both psychologically, physically, and financially, it's not going to be, it most likely isn't going to be, okay, boom, fix this, and then everything's good to go. You might see a remarkable improvement, but you may not have all the resolution of your symptoms because there's layers to this game. So in the past, I have done, I did a SIBO testing and then went through that entire protocol to the point where my gut is a lot better than where it was before. Like I tolerate, most foods much better. My bowel movements are much more consistent. I stay away from certain things that tend to feed some of those non-beneficial bacteria in my upper gut. So it's kind of like managed through diet a little bit. So I'll have a minimum amount of like things like sweet potatoes and things like that. Fruit does fine for me, but usually sweet potatoes and some of those kinds of things usually cause some excess gas and stuff like that. But for the most part, digestion is much more improved. Since starting this whole thing, I've had improvements in my adrenal performance, I think. In the morning, I feel better. And then as the day kind of goes on, it's little, lulls here and there. The other big thing, again, mood and mood stability and mood swings, and then just lack of inability to sleep through the night. So I just got my blood work done again, and we looked a little bit more under the hood because I was interested, and they offered some things. I think I just kind of threw it out there. I'm like, hey, do you guys do mineral testing and vitamin testing? And they said, yeah, actually we do. We do 2 fabulous tests. They do a Spectrox and Immunodex testing, and this is intracellular blood testing. A mixture of lymphocytes is isolated from the blood, and then that's analyzed. And they do some pretty cool stuff also with this in terms of the ability for the cells to maintain function through bombardment of free radicals. So basically they take your cells and then they start adding peroxide to basically kind of denature it, and they see how much it can tolerate. And the higher amount you can tolerate, the better your antioxidant performance kind of is, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. Right? Because that's what the purpose of antioxidants are, free radicals. So some kind of stimulus happens where it's trying to attack your cells and to, buffer it. Antioxidants is what's kind of what they do, right? So that looked great. So my antioxidant function is great. The immune function looks good as well, very good, above the ranges for my age group. So awesome. And then they also do within that test a vitamin and mineral deficiency test. And for mine, all the way across the board, and let me just give you some ideas of what they test. B1, 2, 3, 6, 12, folate, biotin, pantothenate, okay, and then some amino acids, serine, glutamine, aspirin, metabolites, choline, inositol, carnitine, fatty acids like oleic acid, other vitamins D3, A, K12, K2, calcium, manganese, zinc, copper, and magnesium. Then some carbohydrate metabolism stuff, glucose insulin interaction, fructose sensitivity, and chromium. So that's actually pretty cool.
Wow.
Antioxidants, glutathione, cysteine, coenzyme Q10, selenium, vitamin E, alpha-lipoic acid, vitamin C, and then they do the Spectrox and the Spectrox, which is a total antioxidant function. So it basically shows how much function you have through your ability to of antioxidants within the cells, and then the Immunidex, and that's kind of a T lymphocyte function test. I think that's what it is, judging from what this says here. Everything great. Very, very, very good across the board. So that is awesome for me to hear, especially the carbohydrate metabolism stuff. So my cells themselves are able to metabolize the carbohydrates, which is good.
Yeah.
The one thing that came back deficient was biotin. That was the actual deficiency. And then some borderlines, which were vitamin D, B12, D3, and manganese. Yeah.
Interesting.
Biotin. Scott, have you ever had any interactions or
I have
thoughts on or experiences with biotin?
No, I actually have not. I don't recall that of any test. Definitely not any test I've personally had, nor any of the various tests, various kinds that clients have shared with me. I don't believe I've ever seen that on a test. So I have basically zero experience with that. Have you gotten kind of an RX out of this? Like, now?
So, biotin is extremely important in the hair, nails, all that kind of stuff. So looking at my big bald head right here, so that may have some kind of underlying issues with that. But there's also some other, it's a coenzyme. So, it's important for sugar and fat metabolism. So it's important to have biotin, but the thing that the test really shows is obviously you can supplement all that stuff, but if you're eating a balanced diet with tons of variety of foods and you're eating vegetables and the whole thing, theoretically you would think you should already have access to those things. So why are you deficient? So either you're consuming a shitload of biotin or you're not absorbing the biotin, right?
Yeah.
So that is where gut issues could be underlying still, especially since, B12 tends to be one of those things as well. So like, especially for females, will be usually B12 deficient. This is, because females in particular have some more often than not have compromised gut function. I think more often than men. But that being said, we're looking at probably some little bit of underlying gut issues still. So that's one thing. So supplementing with biotin, but also potentially attacking some underlying gut issues is something that we'll kind of talk about in a second. The other thing that I've consistently been doing has been the hormone function testing. So for this, my most recent ones that I got, and I'll pull them up right now for us, is the estrogen is good, which was originally extremely high. And my levels are much lower in the range and actually in a good place. So great. Now I'm not aromatizing estrogen nonstop. And probably some of that has to do with the training that I've been doing, a lot less metabolic work, more balance there, probably improvements in sleep and quality of stress and that kind of stuff. So great. The ones that haven't made a budge and are potentially in a range where we want to make some kind of intervention are the free testosterone and the we'll look at free testosterone for now, and then we'll go over to the thyroid hormone stuff in a second. But my total testosterone is 485, which is right in that kind of lower than my age group range, like on the bottom of the range for my age group. Mm-hmm. But the free testosterone, the usable testosterone, is well below. We're looking at 8.2, and my range goes from 9 to 30. So we'd want it to be on that top end of the range, and we're working underneath that. Yeah. So in looking at that and talking to Joe, if you're putting out a decent total of testosterone, but your free testosterone is the usable form, the conversion of your testosterone to your free testosterone is not happening. And that is something that we look at in a axis of the adrenals and the thyroid. So you can't just look at these things in its own and be like, all right, just give yourself some free testosterone. You should feel good, right? So that testosterone is being taken up by something else. So that's where we look at the thyroid. The thyroid, pulling it up now. So we have TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone. That I believe is contacts the pituitary gland. Is that right?
It's a pituitary hormone, actually.
Yes. Yes. So the pituitary gland secretes TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone, which then stimulates the thyroid to release T4 and T3. Right.
Yeah. Mostly T4.
Mostly T4. However, the usable form to our body, it's like 90-something%, is going to be the T3. So the T4 has to be converted into T3. So the TSH is in an okay level. So you don't want that through the roof, because if you're trying to pump out tons of TSH, it means your thyroid really isn't, or you're trying to stimulate more and more thyroid hormone to be released. Mm-hmm. So my T4 is not on a great level, but the T3 is below. That's what's not budging, and is not budged in the 2 years or 18 months of intervention that we've done. Cortisol's good. All like the thyroid globulin hormones are all good. So it's the conversion of T4 to T3, and then the overall amount of T4 that's there. So there's not a lot of free T4 and T3. Their thyroid stimulating hormone is working, so the pituitary is working. However, the amount of
TSH was relatively normal, you said?
Yeah, so 2.8 for the TSH, and that's within range and kind of in the middle there. But the free free T3 is at a 2.1, and the top of the range is a 4.
Yeah, you happen to get a reverse T3?
I did not get the reverse T3. That is not on this test, and that's what a couple other people had said. But I believe this is enough information to kind of make an assumption that the thyroid isn't working in the first place.
Somewhere there isn't. And so then your cells may not be able to convert it readily and use it readily.
Yep.
Even what you have. So
So now it's first off, Scott, have you had any issues personally or with clients where you're kind of dealing with some thyroid issues?
I mean, I've had a number of people do thyroid tests as that became, later in a number of years ago, I started to realize that was one of the things that was underpinning a lot of this. I had definitely testosterone issues back 2009, 2010, when I was really hitting, CrossFit WODs hard, and also low carbing and fasting and all that. And I did not have a thorough thyroid lab done at the time, unfortunately, but I do have some of the basic markers, and my TSH was it was normal, in that it was normal compared to the Homer Simpson ranges that they have, but it's definitely not what I would have wanted to see in hindsight. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was definitely much too high. So I definitely had some downstream issues there.
Yep.
When I suspect a thyroid problem, getting a full workup, including reverse T3 to kind of see what that ratio is.
Mm-hmm.
T3 to reverse T3. But with that said, we can make some assumptions a lot of times, especially if you know that the person has been doing things that are known to increase reverse T3, which unfortunately a large amounts of endurance training or high output metabolic training is definitely known to alter the conversion of T3 to reverse T3.
Yep.
So we can assume that could be the case.
Yep. So rather than going right after the testosterone, we decided to first tackle the thyroid stuff, which could potentially unlock a lot of other stuff.
Yeah.
So we went on NP, thyroid NP, which is a porcine-derived thyroid hormone. So it's bioidentical, but it's made from pig. And you do that once a day on an empty stomach. And this is a little bit more of like a step up above of the thyroid armor. So we will run this for like a 3-month course, and then we'll retest the thyroid stuff. And then I also talked to Joe about, hey, well, so where could be the areas, like what's the deal with the thyroid hormone? Why would that be something that's not converting? And he says that's largely genetic. Like if you have parents and their parents have thyroid issues and conversion issues, you're going to kind of have the same kind of deal. I was like, do you think, extreme weight losses during high school could play a factor in this here? Because because I have a history of high school wrestling and going from 170 to 135 pounds within weeks and fluctuating my diet and a lot of restrictions and stuff like that. And then the other thing is that I see my brothers and they don't have these thyroid issues. So I have 3 brothers and I don't believe that they have these underlying thyroid issues. Specifically my younger brother who, did plenty of metabolic training and all that kind of stuff and has a similar type of lifestyle as I do in terms of coaching, yet doesn't have the thyroid issues that I have. So obviously you can see genetic factors can be a variable there, but the fact that he wasn't hampered during the ages of 13 to 18 with massive weight losses during, 4 to 6 months out of the year.
Yeah. I would think that, yes, that probably definitely has a factor. What was his answer to that?
He says it definitely could be a factor. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that those things leave a pretty deep and lasting trace.
Yep.
I think it's ultimately why a lot of people have a hard time with weight loss after a certain point. It's like you build in that foundation of either thyroid health or not, and it kind of remembers in some way. I will say, I like that approach going after the thyroid first because it really is kind of the master hormone. You're not going to see a lot of benefit fixing some of the other ones without plugging that problem. While I don't have the actual labs to back up what I did, we've talked before, what that phase when I had the very low testosterone and the TSH was high. I had a body temperature that was often 96 something to even 95 something from all the low carb and fasting and under eating. And I used restoring my body temperature as my metric because if that comes up to normal, then that things are working correctly. And it took a while, but it did. And then I did have a full panel done with testosterone after that point, and I was, I think, just under 800. I don't remember what the free was, but it had gone from like 1 something to 800 something, and I didn't do any supplementing or any drugs, supplements, hormones, anything whatsoever to do anything for the testosterone. It was just by fixing the thyroid and changing the way I was eating and training.
Yep. Definitely need to. I'm going to be looking into the whole cascade as well because all these 3. The cortisol, so the adrenal stuff, the thyroid stuff, and the sex hormone stuff are all integrated and all play off each other. And So, a little research that I'm going to do going forward and kind of like looking at some of the biology behind this and where some of these things, interact, I think is going to be important because, once you kind of grasp that kind of stuff, it can get a lot easier to kind of get a broader picture of where all this stuff is and how they interact with each other. Because, one of the biggest things that people think about, and again, because you were just saying, hey, why not just take testosterone? Well, that may not be, because again, like in allopathic medicine, you might say, okay, you have low testosterone, take testosterone. However, if let's say that testosterone is then just converting into estrogen, you're just going to actually throw fuel on the fire, right? So you actually have to see what is going on under the hood and then address the underlying issue to get the desired result. So if you're just aromatizing estrogen or aromatizing testosterone, giving more testosterone or giving more DHEA or whatever it might be, that might make things worse. You got to be very precise in what you're doing here and know exactly what's going on. So that's why the testing is important. But more than even the testing is having experience with working with people to really have enough knowledge to know what to do, more importantly, what not to do. So going after the thyroid, which is going to be a very conservative way of going about this, because that's something you can actually do and not really mess with anything else in a negative way, but there can be some significant benefit in the long term.
Right. Yeah. If you get that balance, I mean, you're going to have much better control of blood glucose, so insulin will improve if the thyroid functions better. You'll have better cortisol profiles, and because low thyroid, you force yourself to run off adrenaline and cortisol quite a bit more for regular functions. That, of course, then causes a block in the sex hormone cascade, taxes the adrenals, and so on and so forth down the line. But that's just some simple interactions right there.
Yeah. I mean, and it goes deep. I mean, I was just looking at a few articles from Chris Kresser, who's just like a savant when it comes to this stuff, and he's speaks to some of the biggest chemical biologists in the world about this stuff, and it goes really far down the rabbit hole in terms of the interactions and the coenzymes and just crazy stuff. But the other thing that we're going to address, and I will very conservatively, is just maybe some underlying gut stuff that's going on, to make sure that conversions are not being inhibited by poor gut function. So doing a glutamine protocol of 5 grams per day, not all at once, obviously. So breaking that up in the day, that could lead to some pretty nasty gut upset if you're trying to take 5 grams of
30 gram glutamine a day or whatever it was.
Yeah, dude. Like I think I gave that to somebody and they had it all at once, and I think they just said they didn't get off the bowl for like 2 hours.
Oh, man.
So breaking that up throughout the day, which is pretty conservative, getting on a good probiotic with they said 10 billion cells or whatever bacteria per serving. And then I think there might have been one other thing or something like that, but very conservative. Obviously I continue to take my Motil Pro, which is a ginger, B6 and 5-HTP, a supplement before bed. And I've been continuing to do the topical magnesium. That's overall, I think that's been a huge help for me in terms of restfulness, especially in the evening.
Awesome.
So that's just calming down the nervous system, especially because I'm using so much during training as well.
Cool. Yeah, definitely keep us updated on how that goes over the weeks.
Yeah, man. I'm very excited there. But, I believe he said, I'm like, manganese, what's the deal? He's like, well, that actually interacts with magnesium. I go, really? I go, okay. So I got to look into that a little bit. I got to do a little science behind that and see what. I
think I came up low on manganese on one of my tests, and I supplemented it with it.
Darn it, Scott! We got to put some manganese in our diet, I think.
Yeah.
What the hell does manganese do? Manganese.
Yeah, I can't remember some of the little trace things I was a tad low on, but that was one. Yeah.
Interesting. But again, like manganese is something that can very easily be supplemented. But again, I think, if you're having a full spectrum diet, that's something that probably is in food. But if you're not digesting properly, you're probably not being, really
exactly, not
getting it in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's where we're at right now. And hopefully we're on the right track. And I'll take a look at this stuff in 3 months. It's tough to kind of tell too. So I'm going to try to keep objective measures as best as possible. Mood, sleep, because it's not going to be like, oh, I took a pill and this is going to be great. It's going to be something gradual over the next 3, maybe even 6 months where I'm like, oh, wow, I just noticed that I'm not doing this anymore, or I feel this way, or that kind of occasion doesn't affect me nearly as much, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah. Totally. That was why I noticed it was a gradual improvement. I definitely noticed at some point it's like, hey, I haven't done X, for a really long time, or haven't felt this way now for quite a while.
Yeah, exactly. So that's all I got for today, Scotty. You got anything there? I think congratulations are in order, my friend. 7th place in the world.
Got a 7th overall for the
7th
contest.
overall.
So pretty happy about that.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations.
Yeah, now it's back to just kind of free riding and then working on my video projects a little bit. But
awesome.
Which I'm going to go do that here shortly, and then I'm going to eat some liver. Speaking of trace minerals, and then I'm going to the Joel Jameson Bioforce Symposium weekend in Seattle. So,
baby, that's going to be a joy.
I will have some stuff to talk about. My wife actually is off to LA for FRC certification this morning, so we're both going separate directions to different seminars. So.
Oh, wow, cool. One thing I will say, Scott, and this is what I want to put in your mind, and how the protocols have changed over time, like for Joel's stuff. Yep. You know what I mean? And what the impact is and what impact he's seen in the athletes and the performances. I think that's like basically the main thing that I want to know, because he has changed some of those things. I mean, those power intervals that he used to do back in the day was like 2 minutes max effort, rest a minute, and then just keep going. Like the cardiac power. Yeah. Again, like how do does he even think about lactate production during this time? Is it aerobic? What's going on there? And I know it's changed a little bit over time, but obviously that's probably something he's going to be talking about. But if it doesn't, Scott, please bring that up.
Find out a little bit about that. Yeah, the first seminar of his I went to was in New Hampshire. We both had to go to the east side of the coast, I guess, for this. But I remember asking, because that came up.
Yep.
That was on my mind, and I did ask the question then, and this was probably 2013 maybe.
Okay.
Don't recall what the specific answer was, but that's a good one. I'll dig into that. There's not a ton of this is about conditioning. There's business development. There's Mike Robertson's presenting on breathing.
Great.
Breath work, which I'm really excited about that.
Yep.
And then there's some few other kind of advanced application things going on. So
awesome.
Kind of a bunch of different topics. So we'll hash into that next week.
I can't wait, brother.
Some course notes. Awesome.
All right, Scott. Well, I'm Sean LaFlock. You can get me at Sean at CrossFitDarterBeach.com.
I'm Scott Hagnes. You can get me at Scott at CrossFitPortland.com.
Scotty, enjoy your weekend, man.
Yeah, you too.
Take care, dude. Bye.